Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson, joined as always by my co-host Matt Fortuna, and the voice of this most momentous postseason, Tony Simeone. Tony, I'm just curious, like, what it's been like to be on this ride in a way that is much more intimate than either Matt or I are on. We're like at arm's length a little bit. You're like in the weeds with Notre Dame on this. Like, what has this been like? I got to think this has been like somewhat of a once in a lifetime professional opportunity here to be along for Notre Dame's run to the national championship game.
That's a correct assessment. First, let me say thanks for having me. I think I'm the only repeat guest this year, except for maybe Tim Murray. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, Tim Murray's sort of like our co-host at this point.
Yeah. So I'll take the distinct honor of being the bookending the season too. I think it was before week one, maybe, and then now here at the end. Yeah, like, you can't make this up, right? I mean, if you are picking a first year to jump in and get to do play-by-play for Notre Dame football, this would be the perfect season. And I think I've had the unique benefit of being around Notre Dame this is my 9th season, and then I've gotten to interview Coach Freeman the last 3 years on the Coaches Show, that it hasn't been just jumping in right away and having to kind of play catch up on what this all means. I think I've been lucky enough to be here now for almost a decade and have the context of where everything sits with Notre Dame, the 36-year drought they're trying to end. My first year was the 4-8 year here in 2016. So I've kind of seen this whole thing crescendoing to this point. And then, to get to call the games this year, it's unbelievable. Obviously, even the NIU game, like in hindsight, it's amazing to have called that game, to kind of get to see them at their lowest and go through the emotional roller coaster with Ryan Harris and try to figure out in real time what the heck happened. And now to see them win 13 in a row, the way they've been winning the games, I think, is what has maybe taken me aback the most, getting to call them. Like, there were multiple times in that Orange Bowl where in my head, I'm like, okay, this is it. You know, it was a great season, and nobody would fault them for letting go of the rope at this point. And they keep finding a way. So getting to call those moments is just, going back, listening to them. It's so fun. I fear that, especially if they win on Monday, I don't know how we'll ever get any higher than this. This is about as good as it gets as you can ask for in this job. So it's been a blast. And like you guys have been around this longer than me. It's just really fun to see this team kind of putting it all together on the biggest stage. That's the coolest thing. And getting to know some of the players and coaches, obviously, you see all the work they put in. It's obviously very rewarding to watch it all work out for them so far.
I think Matt might be muted there. We'll get his mic fixed. But one of the things that
I'm here. You hear me now?
Okay. All right.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Matt has rejoined us.
It's a very sensitive mic. Sorry about that. I was saying, Tony, when you joined us at the beginning of the season, you were workshopping touchdown calls. Now you might be workshopping Notre Dame as a national champion calls. I mean, what's mentally, I know you don't want to have a scripted call for such an emotional moment, but how do you prepare for this moment, knowing it's ending one way or another Monday night? Yeah,
this is definitely the most stressful part of this. Is, it's exciting, but if they win, there's a good chance, hopefully, that the call will be used for a long time. It'll be, hopefully known by a lot of people. I really am as I've grown up and listened to broadcasters, the number one thing I don't want to do is write something down. I just don't believe in that. That said, I'd be lying if I said, I haven't thought at all about what we'll say if they win. It'll just come to me. There's a notable broadcaster. I listened to a podcast maybe 15 years ago. Everyone would know this guy. But he went on a podcast and tried to convince people that he doesn't script out or even think about what he says. And he's calling massive events. And it's like, come on, you're human. You think about what you're going to say. And you're probably not doing yourself a service if you're not thinking about what you're going to say. But all of that said, if it's a really close, tight game and Notre Dame wins on a field goal or a 4th down stop, you have to just call the game and you just see what comes out. And I think that my hope as a broadcaster is that I've done enough work, in my career and then in the lead up to this game, that if it comes to that, you're able to just work on the fly like you do with any call. You can't plan for the fake punts they've been running this year. You just got to trust you're going to call them right. So if they win in a dramatic way, You just go with the game, call what you see, and hope that it's good enough. But if there's a countdown, it's obvious that they're going to win. Yeah, you have a couple ideas for maybe the things you want to note and the way I want to note them. But I'm adamant I don't want to write it down, just because if you start looking and reading something, it'll sound that way, I believe. And so you just want to have a message you want to get across. And the hope is obviously that they're in a position to get it across. If we're planning to like try to get the words right, and that's the biggest stressor at the end of the game, what an amazing Monday night it is, because they've won and are like taking a knee, or are dealing with the laterals like at Penn State. So if that's the biggest issue on Monday, I think I'll take it as a broadcaster.
What has been your favorite play of the season and your favorite call of the season? And those two things might not be the same.
Oh, that is a great question. One of my favorite plays is it's the one that got called back, the fake punt to Faison in the Virginia game. I think all the fakes have been just extraordinary plays. I don't know about if they're my favorite calls, because they're kind of hard and they're frantic. And if I go listen back to them, like, oh gosh, I don't think I knew if it was Buckner on one of the fakes, but again, they're doing the thing where they wear the two numbers. So you're not really supposed to know.
Biaggi doesn't give you a heads up on this?
Yeah, no, I haven't yet gotten to tap into the Marty Biaggi direct line to get, Buckner's out there instead of Salerno. So those are the plays. I just am always in awe of the fakes and the guts it takes to call them and how well they execute them. That to me, as just a fan, is like, I'm in awe when they pull it off. The Georgia one was just unique unto itself. As far as maybe memorable calls, it's tough to beat the Love touchdown run against Indiana, just because I think of the moment, and we talked about everyone around Notre Dame that's followed it, or even college football, was just what's it going to be like in these home playoff games. And Pete, you were at the game. I don't know if Matt, you were at the game at that time, but just the energy in the stadium was it blew me away pregame, and it was kind of bottled up and it was tight. And there was the tip ball interception. And it was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And then Watts gets the pick, and it just felt like the next play, Love breaks it open, and that whole place erupted and exhaled. And when he gets out in space, it's like you get excited in a way that not a lot of football plays have that much time to kind of, you don't have that much air time to get it all out there. But 98-yard run, he's on a basically 100-yard or 100-meter track sprint, and you get to call it. That sticks out. It was just kind of the look and feel of it was great, and it set the tone. It was really, the beginning and a real checkpoint on this postseason run. It was awesome.
Tony, I'm assuming there's no equivalent, but I'm curious, in your career, what's the biggest potential moment, game, championship you've called that could even potentially rival what could happen Monday night?
Yeah, nothing will be as big as this, no doubt. This is the biggest event I'll get to be at or call. The thing I'm really grateful for is this summer doing the Olympics with NBC and calling field hockey, because in both of those, we did men's and women's. Both men's and women's field hockey went to gold medal shootouts. And so obviously field hockey, it's not one of the premier events of the Olympics, but you get to the gold medal matches, and you start to see, just like for these athletes, obviously it's the pinnacle of their career. And I think about that a lot. What we're going to see on Monday is the pinnacle of a ton of college athletes' career. There's a lot of people will never be on the sidelines or on the field for a bigger game in their life. And that's what those gold medal matches were like for the Olympics in field hockey. And so, and we weren't there. We weren't on site. So it'll be different, I think, to be in the building for Atlanta. We were in a VO booth in Stamford, Connecticut, but you still through the tube could feel how important and enormous every moment was, and every chance in the shootout, that I got really amped up for that and got really, I don't want to say nervous, but you're wound up in a way that only the biggest events, where it's either you're going to win it all or you're going to be completely heartbroken. And that's a unique thing in sports, and frankly, a unique thing in college football. Like for so long, it's these bowl games that are like tone setters for the next year, or you just run it back. And now with the playoff, and I guess, they had the title game now for long enough that there've been these games, but Notre Dame's only been in this game one other time, and it's against Alabama 12 years ago. And so to be broadcasting those moments, that's the closest, but there's a different intensity when it's like you're going to win it all or it's going to come crashing down. It's so extreme. I can't imagine playing or coaching or even being on the sidelines as part of like the medical staff or support staff. I mean, you're living and dying with every play in a way they weren't 10 days ago in the Orange Bowl. That it'll be awesome to see what it's like. And I'm sure, I'm hoping that what I did with the Olympics will at least prepare me a little bit for what it's going to be like on Monday.
And you've called a game in the stadium before. Probably be a little bit more electric this time, though.
Yes. I think there'll be a few more fans there. And I think that, I'll know kind of the angles and the broadcast vantage points. It's a great building. I can't wait to see what it's like. And I've seen obviously the prices and the how difficult it is to get into that building. That I feel incredibly lucky that Notre Dame is going to pay me to be there. How unique is that to get that opportunity to be at a game everyone wants to be at, and they're going to pay me to be there. It's unbelievable.
Tony, at what point, and look, we can all harp on NIU all we want, but I mean, you're like much more in the weeds there than we are. You're around them all the time. I always thought like Pete and I would do this every week. Like, when will you get over NIU? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, they got to at least make the playoff. Like, I just felt like because of the schedule, the fan base, and maybe even the team never got that satisfaction of like, hey, we're actually a really good team that could win it all this year until they actually got to the playoff and won those games. I'm curious, being there day to day, at what point for you did you sense this was possible?
It's a good question. I have an answer, but I want to just follow up on that point. I think that was the best thing, right? I think it was the best thing that they never, because that NIU lost, they never were allowed to think that they were a really good team. It's almost, in my opinion, like, and Marcus Freeman kept reminding them that you can lose to anybody, but it was as if after Texas A&M, they thought they were a really good team and they got humbled, as he said. It's almost as if they needed that. And if they believed they were so good, or we all bought in that they were as good as they really are, maybe they would have come up short at some point. I don't know. It's the great what if, but I'm almost glad that it's taken until they've gotten to this game for us to all be like, okay, yeah, they are really good. They did just beat an incredible Penn State team. For me, the turning point, honestly, was Louisville. And I've said this to a few people. I think that Louisville game, their season didn't maybe go the way at the end that we thought it might, but they had great receivers. Quarterback played an incredible game. And think about how it started. They had to fumble the opening kickoff, and Louisville's in the end zone 90 seconds in. And I was just thinking, like, the way the home season started, you lost to NIU. That the Miami-Ohio game did not get off to a raucous start. And then they're fumbling the opening kickoff. I think I looked at Ryan during the break or even maybe on the air and just said, what's going on with this team when they start at home? You should start at home. You'd think, even defense coming out, 3 and out, get the ball, go score, and have all the momentum. And the drive they had after that, I think it was like 12 plays, 75 yards, one of their best drives this year, short of maybe that drive to open the second half against Penn State. And from that, and they played the rest of the game really well. The Leonard Moore strip, everyone knows all the plays in that game. But that was, I thought, the turning point for them. I think that Louisville's a very good team. They handled them. They matched them across the board. It was only a 1 touchdown win, but I think it was 21 unanswered. It was kind of a statement game, probably internally as much as it was externally. And they still flew under the radar, probably, like you said, for a couple of weeks after that. But that, to me, is just from that point forward, they then were running teams kind of off the rails the rest of the way. So I just thought muff kick, the drive after that was the turning point. And as I look back, they've been a different team, frankly, since then, in my opinion.
I feel like one thing that was interesting about that game that I haven't really talked about or written about was just like the attitude Notre Dame played with by the end of it. Like, kind of the crap talk back and forth with Louisville post game on the field. And like, I don't remember seeing that kind of attitude from a Notre Dame team very often. And I do wonder if, like, in hindsight, like they benefited from that, if that was sort of like Marcus Freeman's behind closed doors edge coming out a little bit, that, I wrote about Penn State and, the press conference with James Franklin. Like, I wonder if the Louisville game, like, served multiple purposes of like, okay, we're good. Riley, I think that Riley Leonard and Mike Denbrock kind of figured out how they work together a little bit better. And then just maybe like the intangible of like the attitude of like, we're not going to take any crap from anybody. And in fact, we're going to give it back.
Yeah, I think that's a good read on it. They just felt like a different team afterwards, and it's like we just said, they were obviously really confident going into and after the A&M game, and you don't know what to do with that after NIU because, and I'm sure this is the hardest thing that Marcus Freeman had to do all year was like he needed this team to simultaneously be confident, have that swagger, believe you are good enough to win a title game, and have it not be misguided to the point that you lose sight of a team like NIU. I don't know how you thread that needle. Clearly, he figured that out, and I think you're right. We saw some of that maybe come out in the Louisville game, and then I think they had the bye and they started to really beat teams down. And I think anytime they took it away from home, it was really impressive to me. You mentioned the Atlanta game against Georgia Tech, who ended up being a really good team. That game really wasn't that close. There were some moments. There was like a bad pick in that game that maybe made it close for a while, but in the end, they won handily. And I think just every week, what you noticed at the end of that game, Pete, was that just grew. And the further you get from NIU, it's been kind of Marcus Freeman's like special talent. It's like the further we get from this, the more confident we can get, so long as we never forget that this happened. And it's a testament to him. I think on the messaging front, and I don't know, I don't know how. I've never coached, but there's just a way in which he's managed to just thread that needle perfectly that has allowed them to be who they are without forgetting their lowest point.
And now a word from our friends at Future Fans. Pleased to be joined by Mike Schroeder, co-founder of Future Fans, a friend of the Independent. Mike, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your background and how Future Fans came to be.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Obviously, Future Fans is a brand that helps little kids become big fans. And it's funny, the whole thing started with my team making a playoff run. In text, I'm a huge Cincinnati Bengals fan. A couple years ago, they're making this unexpected run to the Super Bowl. I'm at the first playoff win in 31 years with my brother. Neither of us live in Cincinnati. I'm hugging people from all walks of life, and it was magical, right? Like there's nothing like it. Sports brings people together. And the rest of that playoff run, I'm literally grounded at home. My wife is 36 weeks pregnant with our third kid at the time. And I find myself watching what for me as a fan were these life-changing games, but by myself. And my oldest child at the time, Ella, 5, is like, despite my best efforts, not remotely interested in watching these games with me. And I don't know about you guys, like, I just thought my kid was going to come out like that coach's daughter in Remember the Titans. That was not exactly my experience. She was into the Skyline chili dip, the Bengals fight song, but the second the games came on, she was out of there. And I had this flashback to 6 months prior. We had done a storybook-led chess product where you read a book with the kid and they learned about these characters that ended up being pieces on the chessboard. Within 2 weeks, she and I could play a game of chess as a 5-year-old where she understood what every piece on that board could do. And so back to the Bengals run, I'm like, listen, chess is fine, but I care a lot more about sports. And is there a better way to kind of reimagine how young kids learn sports? And so that kind of was the inspiration behind what we've built in teaching in parallel in different ways that kids as young as 4 can make sense of.
It's interesting. I feel like Notre Dame fans can relate to a 31-year wait for a significant playoff win. How is that moving forward sort of change your relationship on whether it be Saturday afternoons or Sunday afternoons with your own kids to be able to like watch football in a different way?
Yeah, Pete, it's been so cool. Like, obviously, as we created this brand, my daughter was kind of a guinea pig going through it. And I described her as a 5-year-old, as a 6-year-old. Bengals again making a run to the AFC Championship game. I'm set to go to Kansas City to meet my brother. The night after we beat the Bills in the divisional round, she looks at me and says, "Daddy, please don't go. All I want to do is watch the game with you." I canceled on my brother, who still went. She and I took in what was a heartbreaking loss on our couch. And at the end of the day, like, that's what we're selling, right? Is that shared connection. And again, like, she was capable of understanding football. Like I was doing it. I was incapable of teaching her, right? Like, and you, as dads, like, you're trying to do this as the game's happening. You're like, oh man, this really probably doesn't make much sense. And so, like, I didn't want to leave it up to chance of like, okay, maybe she learns over 4 years of osmosis of like me dragging her to games, forcing her to watch on the couch. And, I just wanted to give her a chance to better understand, because I had a feeling she would like it. And it's been so cool to kind of see that relationship. And as I think back, as we built this brand, like you think about the relationships, at least in my life, like the people that are sports fans in my life, I communicate with more. I talk to more. Like I text my dad more than my mom, I text my brother more than my sisters. And again, it's not a gender thing, but just like that's the dynamic. And like it brings people together. I think about my college roommates and our chats are a lot more active during football and basketball season than they are the rest of the year. And as you think about that in the context of your own kid and, deep relationship, like I want that connection. I want that ability to like always have something to go back to when my daughter doesn't want to talk to me as a teenager. Well, let's talk about the game this weekend, and kind of giving us those connection points.
I know you grew up as a Notre Dame fan. How did that manifest itself as a child?
Yeah, I was a huge Notre Dame fan as a kid. I grew up in Cincinnati, Catholic schools throughout, went to St. X. I had to play like a champion sign above my door in the stairwell of our house. I still remember saving the Sports Illustrated and the Cincinnati Enquirer after the win over Charlie Ward and FSU. And then I remember crying in the following weeks when that kicker from BC made that freaking kick. And for your listeners, I'm no longer a Notre Dame fan. I went to Indiana, but I've always, had a lot of buddies that went to Notre Dame, had the amazing experience, game outcome notwithstanding, of coming to South Bend for the opener. And it was just such a cool experience, like, and to be in that parking lot and like, I don't know, just the whole in-state feel to it. It was just very cordial. Like it was, and I described to some of my Notre Dame friends, I'm like, most civil fan base I've ever encountered. And part of that might be because I live in Columbus with the least civil fan base of all time. And so it was really awesome to be there and have always appreciated and enjoyed kind of the Notre Dame experience.
Well, Mike, one thing that I was curious about, make sure our listeners are aware of, like the activity box with football, like what can they expect when they check that out? And like, what do you think what was sort of the first lesson you wanted to make sure kids picked up to help understand football?
Yeah, it's funny because as you think about football, like downs is the core thing you have to understand, because I could have answered any question my daughter had about football, any question, right? But like with a 0 out of 10 understanding, it was really hard to get her from like 0 to a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 where she could then ask me questions. And so our storybook led activity boxes, they similar to what I described in the chess product. You read a story with the kid and you read about campers playing games like a beanbag toss game that has 4 tries to get a beanbag into the next hoop. If you make it, you advance, you get 4 more tries. If you get it to the last hoop, you get 6 points, right? So they're exposed to these underlying rules of a sport without any reference to the game. And then they get to play that beanbag toss game as well at home, right? So it's kind of this interactive experience. So you read about this game, you play this game. Again, no mention of football, and a kid as young as 4 can pick it up. And then the storybook ultimately crosswalks it. Like any dad or any parent that's a big football fan could make that crosswalk, but the book makes it all super simple and does it a way in which the kid really picks up the concept. But downs are kind of where we started and the core thing that we try to impart, knowledge upon.
Well, Mike, we thank you for joining us on this segment. We thank you for helping to grow the great game of football. And thanks for always being a great friend of the Independent as well.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks, guys, and good luck to Notre Dame on Monday.
All right, we are back on the Independent, and for those who are interested in checking out futurefans.com, you can go to their website and get 15% off that football activity box. That's futurefans.com. You can get 15% off that activity box with the promo code Irish. Tony, I think you're probably a couple years away from your child needing the football activity box, but I can tell as having an 11-year-old, he sort of figured out as he went, attended the IU game, which like we were talking about earlier, will go down as like, I think one of the great home stadium environments that we've been a part of.
You're muted, Tony.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I'm getting the activity box. I don't
Okay.
Our son is 7 months old. I've been rolling volleyballs at him recently. Anything it takes. It sounded great. That sounds like actually an awesome concept. And yeah, I think 11 years old is probably the sweet spot to be at that game on Friday night. I'm sure that's going to be a core memory for your son for a long time.
Yeah, didn't we discussed like, do you want to go to Atlanta? But he was not pushing for it, so we opted against that one. I think that probably would have but a financial bridge too far for the season.
Well, he's probably like, you got my sister Taylor Swift tickets.
Yeah, right. He hasn't put those two things together. So
good.
I'm leaving tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to see him, so it's too late.
It's like was it Tiger King, the meme? Like, I'll never financially recover from this. It's the picture of someone paying for the Notre Dame tickets to the title game. That's a tough one. 11, because I'm kind of a firm believer, and it's a little bit like Taylor Swift. You know, anybody can go, but then there were people that were going twice, and it was like, should you go twice, or should you leave those tickets on the market for someone else to get that experience first? It's like, is 11 years old, like, have you earned this, or should your son leave the ticket on the board for someone else to have that experience?
Yeah.
It's a good moral debate.
I think I've talked, so I'm working on a story this week for The Athletic about people who have been to all 4 playoff games. And I'm stunned, but I shouldn't be, about basically it's a 100% overlap of you. I went to all 4 playoff games, and I went to the Alabama game in 2012. Like those two camps are the same camp. So I think for an 11-year-old, like, you can sit this one out. Like, let's let other people get a shot at fan redemption here on Monday night.
It is amazing the amount of people I've talked to that are just like, I have to go. And they're in the boat of, like, they're, you know, of an age where it's like, they recognize that it's been 12 years since they had a chance. And it doesn't come around often. It's like, I have to go. I'll do whatever it takes to go, because if they win, you know, I think it's I'm putting words in their mouth, but it's like, if they win, I want to die knowing I was there. I mean, it's just like,
I think my next project is to find, if they win, like, people who went to the Fiesta Bowl at the end of the 88 season and the Ohio State game on Monday night. Cause like, there's gotta be a huge group of, well, maybe not a huge group, but like, I'd be fascinated to hear from people who did that. Like the people that was their senior year. I mean, they're like late 50s, I think, at this point. I mean, that's like, you've seen some stuff. So it's what the 36 years?
Yeah.
What that would actually feel like to close that loop, I think, would be a fascinating story to tell.
I'm most curious about people age 36 to like 44, 45 that basically have grown up their whole life yearning for 1988. And that's, I'm 36. They won that title when I was like 5 weeks old. So
you're 5 weeks older than me.
There you go. So it's just like, those are the people I'm most curious about on Monday night, because they've been in it, presumably, a lot of them, not all of them, but for a long time, longer than me, and they haven't tasted it. They've only heard about it. Those are the people I'm really curious to hear what the experience is like if they're there, even just watching. I think it's going to be just so interesting how that goes on Monday night.
Tony, I'm curious, like, from your seat, I hate to use the word change, but like, how has Marcus Freeman evolved and grown this season? Because publicly, it's definitely been different. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, post NIU, there definitely seems to be a more business-like approach, if you will, publicly, to how he's gone about everything. And as it should be after a loss like that. But just like, I remember his first year, they played USC in the regular season finale. That morning, he's on game day. And I think he said, like, go Buckeyes, because they were playing Michigan that day. Like, I independent of whether they're playing Ohio State this week or not, that's just something I cannot ever see him saying ever again in his seat 3 years into this job. Like, how have you seen that kind of maturation, if you will, behind the scenes?
That'd be a good headline if he, for some reason, said it this week, huh? You know, it's interesting because in a lot of ways, I've been thinking about kind of this question a lot recently, just because I'm trying to think back to that first year. And I remember I did our weekly podcast has kind of changed from the old TV show, but I've talked to him basically every Monday, 10 weeks every season. And that first year, I remember doing it after the Marshall game. And I was just like, man, this is going to be tough. Like, this is a first year head coach. They just lost a really disappointing game at home. And I was impressed then with how he handled that. Now, the difference in the last 3 years is that those first 2 seasons, when they had their hiccups, they weren't able to turn the page the way they have this year. And I think what's impressed me most about him since that first year is that he's always been the first one accountable. and he's put the onus on himself and the players. That there is no excuse making from Marcus Freeman, and that's what impresses me most. And I thought that was the case after NIU. And year 3, we talked about it all offseason, and this year, like, this is supposed to be the year for Notre Dame head coaches. So when that NIU game happened, I heard it from a lot of places. Like, how can you let this happen? How can this happen? You're supposed to be past this. And I think that's a reasonable reaction, frankly, for a fan to have. And I think that he kind of had that reaction in his own way, is like, how can we let this happen? And his response wasn't to be, how did this happen to us? He's like, how did we allow this to happen? And I heard that in press conference after press conference, conversation for conversation, when he comes on the Wake Up the Echoes couch, just very much, like you said, I guess, business-like. I don't know if that's an evolution so much as it's just a commitment to what I think he's always believed is the way to go about things. And they just, I don't know, he clearly figured out, we talk about the messaging, a way to convince this team they're still really good, but have to have a different mindset and preparation going forward, which they clearly adopted and have committed to.
I was just going to add, I spoke this week with Marco Cavi, who is the Dayton Daily News preps writer who covered Marcus Freeman's high school career. And he said the first thing he did when they lost NIU was watch the press conference, because he's like, the thing that stood out to me about him as a high school kid even was just how he always responded to bad moments. Like, he told me anecdotes of they're playing these big Cincinnati Catholic school teams, they're down 20 something points, and he's in on every single tackle. Like, I don't care. Like, I got a job to do. I'm going to do it. And he's like, and that's prevalent to this day. And I could see it now.
Yeah. And it's like, he's talked to me for 3 years about the bumpy road, right? I remember was it 2 years ago or a year ago? It was execution. And it can sound like he's just harping on things, but I think that it's pretty clear he believes them and is able to get them across to his staff and to his players. And like, the bumpy road's if you're talking about the bumpy road in year 1 and year 2, then when you hit the biggest bump in the road in year 2 against NIU, it's not a new message, right? It's something you've been preaching. He's like, something bad's going to happen this year, or you're always going to have adversity. And Ryan Harris says it on our broadcast all the time. He's like, something bad's going to happen in this game. When it happens, you can't be surprised that it happens. You can't look at the sky and say, why did this happen to us? You have to figure out what to do. And I think one of my favorite things he says is like, control the thought after the thought. To me, that is the most refreshing way to keep people on task, because it allows them to be human and to make the snap judgment that we all make. Like, what have I thought about all week? How Notre Dame's going to win the national championship. And then immediately I'm not playing, but like, snap back to the game. Hold on. What do they have to do to win the national championship? Or just those intrusive thoughts that we all have. And the team, I just watched the Here Come the Irish episode this morning, the newest one. They show the playoff game. There's a captain's meeting in which they talk about openly, there's people that are thinking about Georgia. And he basically is telling the captains, like, it's okay to think about that. We have to make sure that once we think about it, we focus back in on Indiana. I'm not sure there's a lot of coaches that talk like that to acknowledge it. To me, it's usually like, task at hand, task at hand, task at hand. No, he's saying you can have the first thought, control the second thought, and get back on topic and on task. And that's refreshing. That is giving a realistic expectation to your players and staff to be human, and give yourself that grace to then check back in a way that, I don't know, I just haven't heard that a lot before, like control the thought after the thought. That's unique to me. And I think those are the things that any coach is going to find their voice and find their message and know the best way to communicate it better, year 3 as opposed to week 3.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think his emotional intelligence is incredibly high. The messaging is interesting because I really believed his first year. I remember talking to Jared Patterson about this. Like, it was like a message of the week. And it almost felt like a little grab baggy early on. And then he sort of settled into, okay, like, what does this team need? Like, that's a little bit more durable. And this season's had a handful of messages. They don't control the thought after the thought. He talks about elevate a lot. I think that the sort of behind the scenes video that Notre Dame put out on social, like, it was almost like a joke after the Orange Bowl where he was like, you guys know what I'm going to say. And everyone's like, elevate. But I do think there's something to be said for, like, when you talk to players, and maybe parrot is the wrong word, but they repeat back what the head coach is talking about. Like, that's usually a good sign of just sort of like where the program is and Kaiser, I remember talking to him one-on-one after both the games, and he used the phrase about like either one more guaranteed opportunity. I think it was one more guaranteed opportunity, which like, no, I know Jack Kaiser's like 32 years old, but like no 32-year-old would just like use the term guaranteed opportunity. Like only a coach would say that. But I think the players have done a good job of sort of picking up what Freeman's put down, which I don't think I ever felt that way with like Brian Kelly. I think Marcus just has a way about him that the players want to listen, which like, God, I mean, can you imagine Brian Kelly bringing up the Northern Illinois game for 13 straight weeks? Like the players would lose it. So the fact that Freeman's able to go back to that I think is super impressive, because I don't think most college athletes would want to hear about Northern Illinois more than 2 weeks after it.
Yeah, I think about team glory, and like there's a world in which team glory is this thing that by the end of the year, people might be rolling their eyes at, right? They might be saying, yeah, we get it, coach. Team glory. Like, we're all here at Notre Dame playing for. You get the sense they all mean it. They all say it, and they don't come into a meeting or at a press conference or at media day and talk about team glory in a way that's cynical at all. It's completely earnest. And you look at the team, and you have to believe they're all bought in, because the way they're winning is so many different guys sacrificing for one another. It's a true, I would say like player of the game by committee every week. It's Collins one week, Greathouse the other week, a bunch of different offensive linemen, guys getting hurt, people filling in. And you certainly don't get the sense. I mean, two of your captains are your defensive players that are out. I get the sense they're as involved as captains can be, that can't get to play in the biggest game of their college careers. That goes to that whole thing. And so if you're getting the team glory message across, people believe it and they talk about it in earnest. Then when you're tested to like either, to be about team glory, they all seem to be following through and acting in a way that is in the best interest of the team. And what he said is, yeah, it's true. It's like what's in the best interest of the team will come back and be in your best interest at the end. And, he's getting the best case study ever his proof of concept is in the pudding right now. They're going to the biggest game in a long time in Notre Dame history. And if you're on that team at this point, if at any point you possibly weren't bought in, which I don't get the sense, but you're certainly bought in by now. It's got to be intoxicating at this point to listen to the coach the way he's got them moving.
Tony, I'm curious, just from your seat, beyond Marcus Freeman or the captains, or even some of the injured guys who have stepped up, who do you think are some of the unsung heroes on this roster in this operation that maybe behind the scenes are good at, lightening the mood or just making everyone feel comfortable when things are going well?
That's a great question. As far as like who's keeping them loose out there, I don't know. I think that I just think back to last game. I think Steve Angeli deserves a ton of credit. And I don't even say this to knock the backup for Penn State, but Penn State's backup transferred to Missouri. I don't think we've talked enough about the fact that Steve Angeli, in theory, if he didn't think if he needed to go play somewhere else, or that's the way college football works now, it'd be reasonable for a backup to identify someplace else to play for next year before the end of this season. And he didn't. And he came in and I think orchestrated the most important drive of the year. Even though it only ended up in 3 points, it gave them a chance. If you watch that video at the end of the game, all they're talking about in the locker room is the 7-point game. The message from Marcus Freeman isn't the same if it's a 10-point game. They had to have that drive. It was massive. And I think that, when someone comes in to play over you and you're this, I don't think he was technically the Sun Bowl MVP, but he played a great Sun Bowl.
Should have been.
Yeah. He was like, Steve Angeli's had as good of a backup career at Notre Dame as you can have without getting the reward of getting to start by this point regularly. And that's the team glory thing. And that's the unsung hero. Like, I don't know if at the end of this run, especially if they win, he'll get the proper credit. So that's why I'm trying to at least shout him out now. Like, that drive is just massive in my eyes. And it only happens because you have someone like him willing to just keep his head down, stay the course. He believes in what's going on here. And it's great to watch. I think the offensive line coming into the year, I think we talked about only 6 combined starts, maybe, right? Wasn't that what we were talking about? And they've had a ton of guys go down. They come back in. Charles Jagasaw comes into the game and is just like, first time playing this year is awesome. I don't know. I didn't know that this offensive line could hang in the way they did against obviously a great defense in Penn State. And offensive line is weird because when you don't talk about them, it means they're doing a good job. So I guess in that way, they're always kind of unsung if you're not talking about them. So those are the two areas that jumped out first. And then, of course, all the guys that have stepped in on defensive line, like Tui Alamaka behind Botello and Traore at the start of the year. He was I think a guy that everyone had great hopes for coming in. But the way he's popped here at the end, again, there's just so many different times they could have let go of the rope. And they have these excuses they can make about guys being out. And those guys that have filled in, I just think they deserve a ton of credit for stepping in and not missing a beat. And so I think about defensive line, offensive line, and then, in the biggest moment, Angeli coming through and being ready was phenomenal to watch last week.
Yeah, it's bizarre. You think back to the 6 career starts, and they've added 80 career starts by the end of the season. You also do quite a bit with Pete Bavacqua, the athletic director, on Wake Up the Echoes. And I thought the last episode was interesting. I think one of the reasons I haven't gotten to know Pete that well, but I don't know if endearing is the right word, but I do feel like he's like the first fan athletic director Notre Dame has had. And you had a great conversation about it on the show last week. So I was curious if the video of him on his knees, I think as Mitch Jeter was kicking it, was that when he was had been moved to get down and pray? Did that video ever surface? And will you show it to me if it has?
No, it hasn't, and that's a good reminder to go find it because I was.
Yeah, you got to find this. It's got to be somewhere.
I think I was promised access to it so long as it didn't see the light of day. So
maybe you can just show it to me in the press box.
Yeah, kind of a back channel. Don't name your sources. I think yes. I got to interview Jack Swarbrick the last couple of years, and now Pete's doing a few more regular appearances on the show, which is great. And they're both Notre Dame guys, and they both want this, and Jack Swarbrick deserves a ton of credit for how he helped Notre Dame get there. But I think you're right in the assessment of Pete Bavacqua that he is truly living and dying the same way that the average fan is. He said he didn't watch the field goal. He just turned around and listened and was listening for which kind of cheer it was. I guess by then, if you're on the field, you could determine if it was a Penn State cheer or a Notre Dame cheer, that he's looking at the student section or whatever from his vantage point. And he just dropped to his knees, which it's
probably better because if you watch the flight of that ball live,
right,
you would have thought it was going to miss.
Yeah. And that's think about how many Notre Dame fans were at home. I've seen videos that watch the field goal and they drop to their knees. There's something really refreshing about that. He's obviously not even a year into the full-time job, but I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're getting all you can ask for out of the AD. He has obviously so many more things he has to do than just be a football fan. But what's awesome is that for those 3 hours, and he's getting, he's like me, right? First year on the job, he's probably getting spoiled in the football capacity for this first year as the AD. But it's you don't have to really do a lot of work during those football games. That the work is right in front of you, and it's out of your control. And it's fun to hear that he is about as much like all of us watching the games as you could be. You want that, I think, if you can, in that role, because that then when decision time is coming and when you're having to make all kinds of very impactful decisions about the department and football as a whole, that at least, there's no questions about how much he cares about the results on the field.
Just wanted to thank everyone for subscribing and downloading The Independent. Please continue to do so on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Please tune in to our YouTube channel as well. And thank you to our sponsors from Obvious Shirts. You've seen the shirts all around campus, around Notre Dame games, Notre Dame playoff games. Go to obviousshirts.com. Find plenty of podcast merchandise. Thank you to our partners there for their support.
Thank you to Roback.com. You can use promo code Irish for all your hoodies, which Matt and I are wearing right now. Joggers, shorts, tees, polos, quarter zips. Go to Roback.com, officially licensed Notre Dame apparel. Use promo code Irish for 20% off your first order.
First year president, first year AD, first year play-by-play man. Clearly the keys of success for Notre Dame football this season. By the way, everything we just said about Mitch Jeter makes all the more remarkable that his dad just stood there stone-faced and recorded the video the way he did and went on College Football Live after and was just I got to get back to work. Wow. I mean, I can't imagine having that kind of composure. Tony, the Atlanta Hawks play at Madison Square Garden at 2:00 Monday. I think that gives Mike Bray enough time to get back to Atlanta. Maybe not in time for kickoff, but at least for halftime. How big of a hug are you going to give him if you see him there? And what can we do to ensure he actually makes it to Mercedes-Benz Stadium that night?
My understanding is that his house is just open for all Notre Dame fans while he's gone. It's kind of a
probably always that way, right?
Yeah. That's a good question. So you said the 2:00 game?
2 Central, so yeah, in New York.
Yeah, they might be able to make it back the way those guys travel. I think, he's as big of a Notre Dame guy as ever. I think even now that he's, not in the trenches here every day, he gets to be a real fan. I would love to get a chance to give him a big bear hug if they win. He texted me right after I got this job. It was really nice of him. And he's like, I think he's having a great time in Atlanta too, doing what he's doing with the Hawks. The way it worked out in Atlanta would be great if we could get Coach Bray somehow on in the building in the second half to maybe be a good luck charm for Notre Dame.
Halftime speech if they're down.
Oh my God. It might be a little confusing for some people, but it'd play really well on social media if we won.
It'd be a little bit maybe too loose. Don't worry about it, guys. He'd be trying to say, hey, it's okay. We got him right where we want him. And you see Marcus Freeman's got a slightly different approach when they're down 7. Two guys that I obviously love talking to. And that's what's so great about sports is like there's so many different ways to get through to your team. And it illustrates the difference in the two sports too. But like Mike Bray and Marcus Freeman, at least the way that they approach, I would assume, and I'm not in the locker room, but just from what I can tell, kind of motivational tactics, different tenors, I think, when they talk to their group.
A little bit. Yeah, we should have had Mike on at least for some bar recommendations around Atlanta. I'm sure he's got plenty of those.
Yeah, you wouldn't be short. You wouldn't be short on those.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Well, Matt, unless you got something, that's a great place to wrap up.
I do have one actually semi-serious question. I'm curious. If they win Monday, Marcus Freeman will be a national championship coach. He'll have a seat at the table as the biggest voice, one of the biggest voices in college football. He'll be a Notre Dame legend. He'll get a statue eventually. He's only 39 years old. Like, not ask you to project like his life story from here on out, but like what could possibly be next for him? Is it back to work Tuesday? We're going to work on a dynasty, or is it like, the NFL wants him now. I don't think he's interested at the moment, but like, what's next for this guy if he pulls this off?
I wish I had the crystal ball. I think this is what's so refreshing about him. I truly believe he's not thinking about that at all. He's going to wake up on Tuesday, win or lose, and probably be the same guy. He'll be really happy if they win and probably really upset if they lose. I think he and his staff need a break. That's number one thing. And I would imagine there's a break coming for all the work they've put in. But let's call it what it is, right? I think, okay, well, let's use your hypothetical. If they win, aren't there only 2 coaches currently active with titles? So he'll be one of 3
He's beat both of them.
Right. So certainly, and I think we all have seen this, the evolution we've talked about. We've seen the coach he's become and kind of flourish into in this 3rd year. You have a very reasonable case to make that he's the best coach in the country. Certainly one of, if he wins. I think even if they don't win on Monday, he's one of the best coaches in the country, and he's proven to be a guy that people want to play for. And this is a place they want to play for with him. I think he's like as in line with the university as he could ever be in this role. So, listen, like the world of coaching, the world of football, if we went back 5 years ago, we never have seen this coming. Right? He wasn't even the defensive coordinator here. So it'd be silly for me to say, here's what 2029 will look like at Notre Dame. We never know. And that's why I think you have to savor this moment this year, because you just never know what's going to happen. Notre Dame hasn't played in this game for 12 years. It might be another 12 years. We certainly hope they're in this game a lot more than they aren't, but only 2 teams get to play in it. So I'm kind of beating around the bush, but the answer to me is just that I think he loves it here. I think that what's going on here, it's not just a month run. They've been building towards this. They've been building towards this before Marcus Freeman was here, and he took the program in great shape and has made it blossom in a way it hasn't for a long time. I'm excited about what's to come, but I'm telling you, I'm not trying to look past midnight on Monday at all, just because I don't know when we'll get this again. And quite frankly, let's say they go and they win or they lose on Monday. If we go back somehow to the national championship next year, I just believe it won't feel even as special as this.
No, I agree. I agree 100% on that.
Yeah. So I just think, and I think he gets that. I mean, this guy played in 2 of these games and lost. I don't know if that'll be part of his message. I think it has to be really tough to get that close and lose. I don't know. But I just think he, his staff, all 100+ players, myself, you guys, any fan. I tried to get this message across a little bit in our show the other day. It's just like from now until midnight on Monday, I'm just doing everything I can to focus on what's going to happen because it'll just never be like this again. And I don't know. I just want to soak it up, even if it's like the most heartbreaking of losses, which that could happen. And like, I'm trying to think about it too much, but like they could think about being Penn State. Like they could lose a game just like that, just a gut punch. That's still going to be an amazing experience, even if it's an amazingly awful experience. And the next one will never be the same. You'll never have this team again. You have to just go year by year with this stuff. And I think that's been his superpower this year. He's had them all bought into this year. Certain guys are going to graduate. Certain guys are going to, they're going to bring other guys in. There'll be freshmen. There's already freshmen here getting ready for next year. Like it'll never be the same. And this is the last chance to take in this team. And so that's what I really want to do. And I think that's what he's been best at. It's all about this. I hope Marcus Freeman's here for 20 years. And I'll love every year he's here probably. But for right now, it's like year 3. That's all we care about. And they can, like you said, they can get a statue warmed up if they win. And you got to do everything you can to just like take advantage of that opportunity when you get it, because it just doesn't come around that often.
I would just say professional advice when you're thinking about what you want to say if Notre Dame wins the national championship, you shouldn't go with, this is as good as it gets. It's all downhill from here. Don't do that.
That feels like a Curb episode or something. Yeah.
I won't, but what if it's the truth? Yeah. It's like if they win Monday, when will it ever get better? I just you have to
win 3 in a row. 3 in a row would be better. Not 2, because other people have done 2.
Well, let me ask you this. I hear what you're saying, but don't you think that when you break the 36-year drought, it would take another 36-year drought to feel that same exhale?
It's like the 85 Bears. Like part of the appeal of them is like, that's all they won.
Well, think about Georgia. I'd love to ask a Georgia fan, right? They won in 21 and 22. And maybe some of them do like the 22 team more. But like the 21 team broke a 40-year drought. That team, I have to imagine, holds a special place in their heart that the 2022 team, as great as they were, can probably never replace, right?
I imagine you enjoy it more. Like the first one's more special, but I imagine with that boulder off your shoulder, like the next year, it's like, this is fun. Like we already got ours. We're going to enjoy this.
I just think this run through the postseason, like, because it's not just one game, right? It's right. The 3 that preceded it.
Yeah.
And it being the first playoff game on campus and then the 31-year wait for a major bowl win. Like there's just a lot.
There's the Ohio State stuff. We haven't even there's so much to talk. The Ohio State game last year, they could have won. Coach Freeman's now going to coach against his own team his first 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, Ohio State's supposed to be just like the best team in the country by far. That's all I'm hearing. Like if you beat Ohio State in this game, it's just, there's no questions asked. It's one of the greatest title runs in college football history, especially in the first year of the playoff. Like there is so much to dream about with a win here that, again, I'm with you. Like if they go 3-peat, then like we can have that great debate, right? Which team's your favorite one of the dynasty? But the way college football works now, guys, like that team in a year from now will be so different. The team a year ago, it's so different that they're just these time capsules. And I just think this time capsule, specifically if they win, I just think these guys will be legends. I just think they'll etch their names somewhere. It'll be unreal.
Do you think the Ohio State podcast and fans are having the same conversation about how special it's going to be no matter what on Monday?
Man, I sure hope so. Like, I just college football, man. I just
this
think
is the most miserable fan base.
No, it's like either Ryan Day can stay or Ryan Day should be fired.
I mean,
that's that conversation.
If Ryan Day loses to one of ours, we got to go hire that guy. Even though, like,
I really
no disrespect to Freeman, he wouldn't do a better job than Day is because Day's done really good.
the entire, we need this too at Notre Dame at times. Like, there's just got to be a dose of perspective. Like, again, if Notre Dame, again, I don't want this to happen, but if they do lose on Monday, it can't be somehow reverting to the whole, can't win the big one. When are they going to come on?
If they lost to Penn State, I would have come on the show that night and said, like, hell of a season. They ran out of gas. There was no shame losing the game.
Yeah.
I think this
you're one of the final two teams. Come on.
I think for the Notre Dame fan base, this may be their favorite team of their lifetime. Like, short of winning it all, and certainly if they did on Monday, like, it is probably is better than the 88 team, 77. Like, I don't know how people felt about the 77 or 73 teams, but like, for the Notre Dame fan base at large, this will be the team. This will be the team you will always remember, which is like a really heavy thing to say, but I think is the God's honest truth.
And I think it's because what we talked about a little bit earlier, and sorry for rambling on here at the end, but it's like, think about how many different guys have made huge plays. Yep. There's just something about the depth. Like, RJ Oben has a huge strip sack. He's forever a legend. Jaden Harrison, kickoff return. Angeli has the drive. Aeneas Williams is now like this awesome third down back who's catching wheel routes out of the backfield, sluggo routes against line. It's just like everywhere you look, somebody's stepping up. That's why. It's because it's like all of a sudden you look back and it's like, do we have 40 icons on this team that are making the biggest? Everyone's had a part in the biggest play. In every week, it's a new biggest play in Notre Dame football history or this season. So yeah, if they do get this to the clubhouse and they somehow win it all, I think it's certainly going to go down as a legendary team. But even if they come up short, and I think this is why we should all be grateful we have the playoff now. These moments don't exist without the format.
Right.
They've given Notre Dame fans something to cling to for a long time, even if it doesn't go the way we want to on Monday. And that's special. That's really special. And I hope that, again, whatever happens, like, everyone at Notre Dame keeps that in the back of their head, that even if it doesn't go the right way, they're just an amazing season, just a remarkable season that I think we'll talk about for a long time.
We're overlooking the best part, which will be Pat Coogan's championship parade speech.
We have to have that speech off campus.
Oh, yeah.
Nowhere near the Basilica.
On top of the linebacker.
Live stream from the linebacker. That'd be great.
Yeah, just parade down Angela Coogan's on linebacker. It works out great. All right. Well, Tony, we appreciate you coming on the Independence. Monday night's going to be awesome. Can't wait to be in that building and just sort of see what the energy is like and feel what the energy is like. I still remember it in 2012 pregame and just sort of the electricity there. I think it will be comparable, maybe exceeded on Monday night.
You guys going live on Monday after the game?
Oh, yeah. At 8:30 in the morning. Yeah, we'll be on there.
You want to join us from the team bus?
Well, I was going to say, I usually do actually log on right as we're getting towards the plane, but I believe we'll be leaving later. So maybe I will, if they win, maybe I will zoom in to get a post-game comment. We'll see.
Ooh, I like it.
But
you'll be at the party at the hotel, just going around with your phone, getting live shots for us.
I'm sure
our most streamed YouTube ever.
Yeah. Be a great night to go live if they win.
Dry January canceled.
Yeah. But no, before I go, I just want to say you guys do an awesome job. I appreciate you having me on. I listen to a lot of different Notre Dame content, but nothing excites me as much as when I see the push notification on the phone here that there's a new independent, and definitely like post game. And I know you guys have gotten this from a lot of fans, but like just the immediate debrief is, it's great to hear, because especially when I watch it, it's in real time. We see some replays. We don't get to unpack it right away. You guys have a great kind of 30,000 foot view. And I'm thinking about it right now. I cannot wait to listen to the show Monday, no matter what happens, because it'll just be, I don't know. It's just one of those things I always do. It helps me kind of contextualize what we really just watched. So keep up the great work, and thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you joining us, and appreciate the kind words as well, Tony. Our only two-time guest of what's been a magical Notre Dame football season so far. So maybe he'll be a three-time guest if things go a certain way Monday night.
Okay, hope to talk to you Monday night.